I'd like to welcome everybody here. We have Jule Selbo, Nicole Asselin, and Marie Henriksen. Henriksen? There's no D in it. She told me that earlier. And Maria's from Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, I believe. She told me. So yeah,
Yes.
I have a good memory. And hopefully Christine Gabriel will be joining us a little later. I think she's having some problems. She said her computer just crashed. It's rebooted.
Oh no.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
All right. So first of all, a lot of people have been asking about Annie McDonald. She's battling the virus right now, and she went to see her doctor a couple of days ago. So wish her all the best. All her thoughts and prayers are with her, of course. I mean, this is tough, and she's got some other issues that she's dealing with besides. So really hope she pulls through. She's such a positive person. I don't want to see anything happen to her. So, you know, if you get a chance, if you see her, happen to see her on Facebook or something, send her best wishes. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Who's chomping at the bit, wants to read first?
I'll get it over with.
All right. All right. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, and because the people that are watching this from the outside don't know who you are. I mean, we all know who you are, but just go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm Jule. I'm Jule Selbo, and I've been with Panda Moon for a year and a half, and my book that is published through Panda Moon is Find You in Florence. Yeah. And I was really excited to join Panda Moon and have this book out. I'm a screenwriter and a novelist and a playwright. So I was teaching screenwriting in Florence, Italy, and I did that over 3 years. And when I was there, I decided I always wanted to be a novelist, so it was time to start writing novels because I was away from Hollywood. So this is the book that I wrote. And I was there, and it was the 50th anniversary of the Mud Angels. It's a group of people who came from all over the world when the Arno, the river in Florence that goes to the city, flooded. And to catastrophic proportions. This was 1966. And the galleries and the library and everything were just underwater. And people from all over the world just showed up. They hitchhiked, found their way to Florence, with rubber boots, and they put them on, and they started digging into the muck and mud and brought out Cellinis and Raphaels and fabulous books and stuff. And they were called the Mud Angels. So my book is about a woman whose mother was a mud angel. And the woman, Lynn, is going through a whole bunch of stuff of her own while she's trying to find the secrets of what happened to her mother during that. Is that Christine?
I think that's Christine.
Yeah, there she is.
Hey, Christine.
So should I just go ahead and read, and then you guys can ask questions?
Yeah, just go ahead and start reading. And
so I cut down chapter 1 to 5 minutes. Pretty sure it's 5 minutes.
Okay.
I celebrated my 35th birthday alone last night. At the last minute, just hours before our flight, my husband announced he couldn't join me in Florence this year. Big deal at the office, sorry, but can't get away. Stan's voice on the phone sounded rushed. But we were all packed. I looked at the carry-ons at the door. They were like anxious kids waiting to go to the birthday party. All my stuff's in the Travel Pro bag. Lucky, I said we should pack separate. But I slipped one of my sweaters into your, taking it out. It's a drag, I know, Lynn, but being junior partner now, and I could tell he was multitasking, going through files, motioning to his paralegal for coffee. I was only going to stay for a few days anyway. You'll be busy. Stan, you always join me. Come on, always? 3 years isn't even a tradition yet. It is to me. It won't be the same. Don't make me feel guilty, babe. Gotta go. Okay. I'll call when I get there. I love you. It rung off. I growled in frustration. So here I am, at the Cafe Jule in the heart of Florence, alone, ordering my morning cafe Americano. My mother's journal, the leather-bound pages that I climbed into the attic to retrieve after a funeral, is in my bag. Its weight is a reminder of my promise to myself: follow her memories, rebuild her moment, find me in Florence. And while I'm here, I'll work with a group of aspiring writers. Not teach really, just help them explore their unique voices in a city renowned for its art, innovation, and inventiveness. No rules. Give them an opportunity to dismiss the should from their creative psyches and just let their work be what it should be. I should try to take my own advice. I've been struggling to find the shape of my next book, my mother's story, find what it might be. The tuxedo-jacketed waiter delivers my cafe Americano in a beautiful silver pot along with a cornetto simplice on delicate china. Most people here call the cornetto simplice a croissant. They are shaped the same, but I know not to expect the French buttery crunch and lightness. The consistency of the Italian cornetto is closer to a brioche, doughier and yeastier, and most are topped with a slightly sticky orange-scented glaze, and some are filled with custard or Nutella or jam. Best to hold it with a paper napkin it's served on, or commit to sucking on your fingers the rest of the day. And I don't want to do that in Florence. It's a sophisticated city, not a walk around, suck on your sticky fingers city. Mi scusa, signorina, perdone. Startled, I looked up. The early sun obscures his face. He's tall. He holds a scarf in his hands, my scarf. Signora, it's Jule? Is this yours? Yes, it's the inexpensive bright red scarf I bought at a kiosk yesterday for €5 on a rare "it's my birthday, live a little, dare to shine" whim. Buses slip off my bag and fall into the ground. I take the scarf. Grazie, grazie. He sits at another table. Un espresso, por favore, he says to the passing waiter. Because no one tips in Italy, unless it's an extra special experience, waiters rarely put forth any effort to please the customer. A person's lucky if service is attentive in any way. However, this waiter nods at this tall, dark-haired man in a white shirt and tie, and they exchange a friendly greeting. He must be a regular patron. Sport coat and dark jeans, polished leather shoes, a leather briefcase. There is so much leather in Florence, on people's backs, on their feet, in shops, in kiosks, some expensive and buttery soft, some rough and stiff and inexpensive. The city smells of leather. Across the piazza, street vendors push their carts into place, begin to set out their wares. I sigh, think of last year. Stan and I sat at this table. Stan ordered the American breakfast that used eggs and toast. Italians use eggs to bind their frittatas, or they hard-boil them and slice them into sandwiches. They don't torture and sear eggs and then pile them in a pale yellow mound on a plate for a morning meal. Stan laughed. It's my Nikes and the scrambled eggs. Screams USA. At least you don't wear a baseball cap, Bermuda shorts, and knee-high tube socks. Someone has to see you eating breakfast to get the first American hints. You hold these Italians up too high, Lynn. Things take too long to get done here. I appreciate that they know how beautiful the old is. In the last 2 years, Stan and I had carved out a week from his work schedule to visit me in Florence during the month-long Writers Now retreat seminar. This visit will be different. An entire month witnessing Florence through my alone lens, not clouded by how Stan sees it. I'm gonna skip this little history thing here and go down to, I head towards the Ponte Vecchio and turn left and walk along the Arno, river that runs through Florence. It's moving fast today, the result of a sudden rain last night. It's early, the start of the day, but lovers are already taking selfies, kissing and canoodling on the stone walls between water and city. The mediocre violinist I remember from last year and the year before, his instrument case open at his feet to attract tourist coins, plays the Godfather love theme. This is the only tune he seems to know. Professors, students, shop workers, dog walkers, businessmen and women hurry to their destination. A tour bus pulls up and a gaggle of Chinese tourists descend onto the street to march behind a guide waving a bright green flag through the air. I lift my bag onto the river wall, feel the shape of my mother's journal within it. I gaze at the Arno, think of the time my mother spent there, 50-some years ago. Her stories of how the Arno catastrophically flooded Florence in 1966, priceless Roman and Renaissance artwork, and irreplaceable ancient books, maps, and prints, and centuries-old letters housed in the city's museums and churches and libraries were in danger. One day, when she was helping me streak my dark curly hair with orange highlights for a junior high Halloween party, and we were waiting for the sprayed-on color to dry, she took a large book off the shelf in the hallway. She sat on the edge of the bathroom's tub and studied the map of the Tuscan region. She explained how the Lopenna and Lavane dams in Valderno, 34 miles away, ruptured during heavy rains and sent over 70,000 cubic feet of water per second towards Florence, traveling at almost 40 miles an hour. Think about it, Lynn, she said later as we drove onto the Cross Island Parkway in Queens so she could drop me off at the party. Water was coming into the city as fast as we are driving right now. I was barely listening. I was worried about the orange streaks in my hair. I was worried that the orange streaks in my hair were too scary stupid for my Halloween party and that my dance moves would suck. She showed me photographs she kept in a small wooden box in her closet. Photos of herself as one of the angels of the mud, Gliangino del Fango. As the river waters rose and fell, volunteers arrived from around the world to wade through the Dexter's attempts to rescue Florence's rich history. My mother was in the photographs, part of the Mud Angel rescue team. This was before she married my father and settled in New York. At least 3 million books in, and probably more, and over 1,500 works of art, probably more, were damaged or destroyed in that flood. We wanted to save everything, but we couldn't. So many lost treasures. And then after her first stroke, when I sat next to her on our comfy living room couch near the warmth of the fire my father had built in the fireplace, we thumbed through picture books on the flood. She spoke slower and slurred a bit, forgot some words, but I could tell memories were dancing in her head. I'm going to skip a little bit. She said it was sad because the flood could have been avoided. The Arno, Florence's lifeblood, had flooded to devastation levels before. The first one recorded in the 12th century, and then again in the 13th and 16th centuries. We studied reproductions of Leonardo da Vinci's drawings. In the early 1500s, Lynn, he drew up these plans for river control, but no one paid attention. He wasn't popular with the rulers, the Medici. Da Vinci was flamboyant, Lynn, and even though Florence was relatively open, it seems there was a don't ask, don't tell sort of policy. Da Vinci may have flaunted too much. She sighed, told me how even Michelangelo, decades later, designed dams, but no projects were ever brought to fruition. Change did not happen. And so in 1966, Florence and now I'm here, 50 years after the fact, feeling the outline of her journal in my bag. It holds clues to stories she never told me that I missed the telling of, photos she had never shared with me. I look down into the river, fight the wave of sadness mixed with guilt. I see myself sitting next to her on her hospital bed, her thin, dry, beautiful handwriting on the pad of paper we used to communicate. She wrote, honeymoon suitcase, attic, ring? I told her, of course I would. She continued her effort, find me in Florence. But I didn't get to the attic. I didn't bring the suitcase or those memories to her in time. That's truncated first chapter.
Hey, that was pretty good.
What is that? What is that
The
sound?
feedback, yeah. Oh, Elgon, you're on mute. There you go.
I put my microphone on mute in case it was me doing it, but I think somebody's microphone's picking up a lot of background noise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll have to make sure in the bottom left-hand corner, guys, it'll say mute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it seemed to be Maria's microphone. So when it's your turn to do reading, Maria, move closer to your microphone because it seemed to go away as long as Jule was talking loudly, but it kind of came in and interrupted.
Was I talking too loud?
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, you were fine. It was just at times the background noise kind of distracted from it, which is unfortunate. But
I have a question.
okay.
Yes,
Go
I have
ahead.
a
Nicole?
question for Jule. I'm raising my hand. That I love that the title is in that first chapter a couple times. I just love when books have that. That's really cool. How much extra research did you do? You said you lived there for a little while, but did you do even more research?
Oh yeah, tons and tons and tons of research, and I love doing that. I think it's from my professor background, but yeah, I think I spent probably a good year doing tons of more research as I was writing, and then I would have to go back and add, and you know how you get so much research that then you have to go stop because it starts becoming a history book instead of a character book. But yeah, because there were so many great details because like when the river flooded, everyone thought it was just because of the torrential rains and stuff like that. But in my research, as I dug deeper, it was really a mistake by someone up the river. They flipped the wrong switch.
Oh,
So
wow.
Florence was just devastated.
Ugh.
No, awful. I like reading historical fiction. You know, that's well researched because it gives you some background of what actually happened. And a lot of times it's events like this. Like I didn't know anything about the Mud Angels, you know, before your book. And
Well, Elgon, remember I sent you that thing today that they're calling people that are making masks.
yeah, right.
My
mask game.
sister-in-law in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
she said people are making masks and leaving them at the post office, and you can just take one if you want them. And she said, because of your book, I said we should call it the Mask Angels.
Right.
So they all call them the Mask Angels.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, you know, years from now, maybe not that far away, people be writing about this situation too, about their own stories and everything that happened during this. So, you know, a lot of times history gets glossed over and it gets forgotten. But when people revisit things, local communities tend to remember their own history. And if you interview the people that actually lived through it and you know, listen to their stories, you pick up some really interesting stories sometimes.
Yeah, there was, because it was the 50th anniversary, a lot of reunions were being held, and the British Institute there, the kind of a club for a lot of expat Brits live in Florence. But I got an invite to be able to go to the club. So I talked to a lot of them and some of even their terms, because this was in the 60s. And so everybody was mod and they were wearing mini skirts. And this one really tall, cool British lady was telling me, she said, I thought I was so cool. And I showed up in my mini skirt, my little, you know, twiggy outfit. And she said, and then I realized, oh my God, no, I'm in a disaster. And so she said, it wasn't enough time to be fashionable.
Right. Yeah, I remember the 60s. I was a kid then, but you know, that was some strange times. People dressed very oddly. I mean, not that, you know, when I was in high school, I guess we dressed kind of odd too, but that was in the 70s. So, I mean, I remember having, you know, really wide bell-bottom pants and, you know, very, very busy looking patterns on shirts.
See you in bell bottoms out.
I would pay to see that too. Especially with the Santa beard. I think it would go good together. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, I had a problem growing a beard. Like when I was in college, I think it was like 21 years old. I decided I was going to grow a beard, and 6 months later, I'm in the, you know, the bathroom of the fraternity that I lived in, and I'm like, you know, kind of tending to my beard and trimming it, you know, really nice and everything like that, and as I'm so fair complected and I had blonde hair at the time, you could barely see my beard, which really hadn't occurred to me because I'm really close to my face, you know, and I'm like, you know, kind of knocked it up and everything. And one of my fraternity brothers came in and he said, damn, I didn't know you were growing a beard. And that's like 6 months, you know. I said,
Well, you've more than made
that
up for it.
does it. I'm shaving it off.
Yep. you've made up for it now, so that's good.
All right. Who wants to go next? All right.
I was on mute. That got to learn how to do that. All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Asselin, and I wrote Murder at First Pitch. Ooh. Because I'm a big baseball fan. As you can see, I have my Red Sox pillows since there's no football. Or, no, look at that. I already messed that up. Baseball, no sports, really. And I don't think you can see it, but I have my Xander Bogarts garden gnome. And then up top, I have my Pedroias, my Ortizes, all of those lovely things. So my grandfather got me hooked on the Red Sox, and I've loved them ever since. And a couple years ago, somebody said, what kind of mystery book would you write? And I was like, it'd be really cool to write one like at a baseball stadium or something. And that's where Murder at First Pitch was born. I felt the Red Sox probably wouldn't love it if I murdered somebody at Fenway Park. So I ended up creating my own fictional baseball team set in my real life hometown of Abington, Massachusetts right now. Oh, hey, Laura. And it's been kind of fun because a lot of people in Abington, they're like, we know we don't have a team, but we love that we could have a team. And so that's really fun for me. It's the Abington Armadillos, and the story centers around the main character is Madeline Boucher, who loses her corporate job, as mostly happens in cozy mysteries, and she goes back to work for her family baseball team, and she stumbles across a dead body. So, and then shenanigans ensue, which is my favorite part of a cozy mystery. I'm going to get into the book. I'm going to read a section after she's found the dead body, and kind of the reason she starts investigating. So it's actually chapter 4, just full disclosure. The next day, Madeline woke up after a restless sleep. Seeing dead bodies is not something that helps ease a person into peaceful dreamland, that's for sure. She stretched, reaching her arms behind her head, and grabbed her phone. She found about 10 text messages from Davis asking her to get to the stadium as soon as possible, all sent before 8 a.m., so it must have been serious. She quickly hopped into the shower, pulled her hair back into a headband, and dashed to her car. One benefit from losing her job in the city was the new lack of commute. Her house was in the town she grew up in, and the ballpark was only a 5-minute drive away. On nice days, she could even walk to the park if she wanted to, which she rarely did. Exercise was not her favorite activity in the world, so driving it was. Her parents also ended up building a house near the park, which is why they had such easy access to the park as needed. Madeline and her brother grew up near the park, and even when she got her job in the city, she bought a house close to the family. Madeline pulled into a parking space close to the front entrance of the ballpark. She was surprised to see a television ban out front. She knew it was a story, but the news seemed to be excessive. She thought at most it would be a newspaper or blog story. It didn't look like they were filming at that very moment, so Madeline hoped she could rush in without anyone seeing her. She pulled the hood of her sweatshirt over her face, took a hold of her purse, and jumped out of the car. She walked as quickly as she could to the front door and was almost there when she heard her name being yelled across the parking lot. Madeline Boucher, it's me, Jennifer Roberts, from high school, remember? A tall, leggy blonde made her way over to Madeline from the news van carrying a microphone, followed by a chubby cameraman in a stained Red Sox t-shirt. Madeline tried to get into the door, pretending she didn't hear the woman yelling her name. She shook the door, but of course it was locked and she couldn't get her keys out of her purse in time. Of course. She plastered a smile on her face and turned around. Jennifer, so good to see you. She cringed at the fake sound of her own voice. This whole thing was not going to be pleasant. What can I help you with today? Are you here about the exciting plans we have for opening day next week? Madeline smiled, knowing how much she was probably annoying the reporter. Her camera guy turned towards Madeline, even though she still had her hood pulled up over her face. Jennifer shoved the microphone dangerously close to Madeline. Do you or the Boucher family have any comment regarding the allegations of murder against the prodigal son, Benjamin Boucher? Madeline looked shocked, and Jennifer repeated the same question twice. Finally, Madeline blurted out, no comment, and turned away from the camera. She heard the door rattle behind her, and an arm reached out and pulled her inside the gates. She found Davis there with a grim look on his face. Jennifer Roberts was still outside, yelling questions as he relocked it and led her to the office conference moves. rooms. Davis, what's going on? I thought everything was going to be taken care of yesterday. Why would she need or want a comment from me? Madeline followed him into the conference room and looked at the assembled group. The whole family was there, minus Ben. Her mother was standing at a window with a wad of tissues in her hands. She was ripping them into tiny pieces as she stared out the window. Her father was at the head of the table with his hands forming a steeple in front of him. The rest of the table included Eliza, Davis, a few managers of the office, and Billy, the team manager. Maddie, please take a seat. We have some things to discuss today. Her father gestured to the chair next to him. She sat down heavily, still wondering what was happening. Why wasn't Ben there? As you all know, there was a tragic incident here yesterday at the ballpark. A man was found dead in the visitors' dugout. After investigating most of the day and night, the police department has ordered us to wait a day or two before opening the visitors' dugouts to player and personnel. They want to make sure they can officially clear the scene first. He rubbed his hands across his face. Davis, as security lead, you'll be the point person with police. They don't believe the investigation will impede the schedule of opening day events we have, but that's subject to change, obviously. I'm going to hand over the rest of the meeting to you to discuss the rest of the security issues. Her father yielded the floor to Davis, who moved to stand in front of the room. I know this is a hard time right now, but the police have assured me that they would do their best to make sure this investigation will go as smoothly as possible. I know you're wondering where Ben is this morning. Well, he's an official person of interest in the investigation, so we have decided to have him stay away from the ballpark for the time being. Madeline gasped at the last part of Davis's speech. Her brother? A suspect in murder? What the heck was the world coming to? There's no way Ben killed anybody. The police are looking in the wrong direction. She jumped out of her seat and looked at Davis. Warily, he looked at her and gestured her to sit down. Maddie, we all know he didn't do anything wrong, but for now it's just easier to control the media and the investigation if he stays away. That way there is no semblance of conflict of interest, plus it'll ease the distraction leading up to opening day. I don't need to remind you that there will be some media here, and if we can keep the spotlight off the murder as much as possible, we have a chance to get out of this situation with minimal damage. And that's the taste I'm going to give you today.
Great. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That was excellent.
Great. It really was. Good job.
Thank you.
I have a question.
It's
Uh-oh, yes.
such an odd premise too.
Yeah, I love this book. I read it when it was first published, and it's not really a question, but I'm kind of wondering what you're going to be doing with the next one, because so much part of the fun of it was getting to know the family and the family dynamic. And are you going to have another murder at the stadium?
Yes. Spoiler alert, yes. The book is already with the publisher, so I can't change it now. But in anticipation of having a murder she wrote situation where everybody dies in Cabot Cove, the third book that I'm plotting now moves away from Abington for at least one book. Still at a baseball related thing, but probably in a travel team.
So yeah, it's on a road
Yep,
trip.
exactly. Or at least a road trip for Madeline. I don't know if the whole team's going to go, but we'll get her out of the park. At least one murder will happen outside of Abington. I don't want people to think Abington's like a crime-ridden town, because it's
Right.
really not. I know we're close to Brockton, but we're not Brockton. It's fine.
Yeah.
Although I love
Right.
Brockton, don't get me wrong.
It's not like the town that Laurel and Scott has in her books. I forget the name of that town. New Royal, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Those crazy
It's like
Ohio
supposed to be
people.
a small
I
town.
know.
Supposed to be a small town. Down around where Athens is on the map, and its claim to fame is as a university and a prison. So,
And I think,
of course, there's going to be murders.
yeah,
there.
and I think that's one of the appeals of the cozy mystery, because it's kind of like suspension of disbelief, like All Murder, She Wrote. Like, nobody ever talked about the fact that she did 20 plus seasons and people got murdered in that small Maine town that I know Jule knows there's not a lot of people in Maine town. So how are they all dying?
Well,
Right.
it helps when Stephen King lives down the street from
That's
you.
true too. He kills a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, figuratively, whatever.
Yeah.
but he also has a corgi, so that kind of like balances the scales.
I
That
agree.
balances it out. I heard a great story about a guy that was interviewing him in his study or his office or whatever. And the guy asked him, where do you get your ideas for your story? And he goes, well, I have the mind of a child. He slides his desk drawer open. He goes, I keep it in here.
That's great.
Don't ask questions.
Yeah.
Don't look too closely at the murder writer, horror writer. Like, that's the thing.
And by all means, don't look at their search history on the
No. I have a couple books that I ordered on Amazon about poison, and I'm like, ooh, this would look real bad if anybody in my like immediate friend zone dies. And I took a picture of my backyard the other day. I had a deer, which was very exciting. And I took a picture and sent it to the family, and they're like, what's in the bags that are back there, Nicole? I was like, oh, it's all my gardening tools. And they're like, are you sure? Is it a bug? And I was like, I don't really kill people. Like, I want to sometimes, but I don't. Plus, I've been social isolated. How can I kill anybody?
That's great.
Which people are going to watch this and be like, Nicole Asselin, I got to remember that name just in case.
Yeah,
We'll
the
keep an eye on her.
FBI is starting a surveillance
Uh-huh.
report on you right now.
NSA is also recording.
Christine? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm
Alright,
muting.
Christine's
Kind
next.
of late. I gotta work early tomorrow morning. All right. I'm going to be reading from Crimson Forest. I'm actually just going to read the first chapter. Kind of get
All
to
right. Since a lot of people are going to be watching this, don't know who the heck you are, tell us something about yourself.
I am Christine Gabriel. I am the author of Crimson Forest and Crimson Moon. I'm also the marketing communications manager at Pandaverse Publishing. Hey, everybody.
Christine, can you just talk a little louder?
Can you hear me better? Let me look. Let's see. Is that better? So I guess here we go. So this is going to be from the first chapter of Crimson Forest. So beautiful, I cooed as I ran my hands through the soft crimson-colored moss that crept across the ground and up the old oak tree I leaned against. The crisp, cool air felt good against my flushed cheeks. The light breeze felt like soft fingers running through my long, wild chestnut hair. The sun peeked its head through the tall, fall-colored treetops and hit my amber eyes. I smiled and imagined new freckles growing across the bridge of my nose. Is that what seemed to happen every time the sun hit my pale face? I lay my head against the tree's soft, mossy coat and closed my eyes. I breathed in the heavy aroma of autumn and allowed the music of the forest to fill me. Every sound was magical, from the sweet song the birds were singing to the rush of water from the nearby river. Suddenly, I heard a sound that I recognized immediately, and my eyes flew open. A pacifying calmness washed over me like a warm summer rain as I admired the large white-tailed deer that stood directly in front of me. I remained still so that I didn't scare the skittish animal away. Its grayish-brown coat glistened in the fall sun, while its muscular body twitched in anticipation of my silent reaction. It took a step toward me, and I noticed something odd. Its large antlers were still covered in soft velvet, which was not normal for this time of year. I held my breath and slowly reached my trembling hand toward it. Its warm brown almond-shaped eyes stared at me calmly. I smiled, gently touching the sharp end of the antler with my fingertip. It snorted and kicked at the ground, its warm breath visible in the cool fall air. The magnificent animal's demeanor suddenly began to change. Its tail flicked up, showing the soft white color underneath as a warning that something was wrong. Fear replaced the calm in its eyes, and it reared up, letting out an aggressive rattling noise. I watched in sheer horror as blood-red moss began snaking its way down the animal's antler, beginning in the place I had touched. It spread like wildfire around the animal's strong body, and within a matter of seconds, completely engulfed it. The deer fell to the ground and writhed in pain. No, I yelled out as I forced my fear-paralyzed body to move toward it. I put my hands under its head and began to sob quietly. I felt helpless as it looked up at me with sad, unforgiving eyes. It took one last breath, and I felt its body go limp in my hands. You did this, a female voice called out from behind me. I wiped the tears from my eyes and turned around, only to find no one was there. What do you mean I did this? I called out angrily. I heard a girlish giggle from deep within the forest. You know exactly what I mean. All you have to do is remember. Remember what? Remember who you are, Angelina. Remember who you are. I woke up, sweat drenched and shaking. The nightmares were becoming much more frequent lately, and I didn't know why. Every night it was the same thing, red moss and death. I reached for the glass of water on my nightstand and let out a startled gasp as my hand came across something soft like the deer antlers from my dream. It was the velvet picture frame that housed a photograph of my father holding the baby version of me. I treasured that picture. I knew it was there, but I snapped my hand back, knocking over the glass of water. It hit the hardwood floor and I sighed. My alarm clock read 6 a.m. Time to start my day, so I pushed the covers off me and used ninja moves to hop out of bed and over the mess I had made on the floor. I flicked on the light switch, grabbed a towel from my hamper, and cleaned up the mess. As I got dressed for the day, I paused momentarily, admiring my womanly curves in the full-length mirror. I supposed I was pretty in a girl next door kind of way. I used my slender fingers to push back my long, wavy chestnut hair that hung wildly around my pale, slightly freckled face. My amber eyes peered back at me. It was going to be a busy day, full of running errands for my mother, dealing with mouthy hunters, and occasionally answering questions for the curious tourist who wanted to know where the red moss in the forest had come from. That was the joy of my life, living next to the famous Crimson Forest. Yay! There you go.
So I know the answers to a lot of these questions because Christine and I have been like around since the beginning of Pandaverse. But and we talk a lot and we chat almost every day. But for the sake of all the people who don't know Christine, all right, whatever possessed you to write a book like this?
Well, I like to kind of live on the edge of reality and fantasy. So why not? Why couldn't it be true? Why couldn't it? This is based on a real place. It's based, I made sure to do a lot of research to where I wanted it to be where the largest hunting population was, which was, there. So I just made it believable.
It's in Wisconsin, right?
Buffalo, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yes, with lots of trees and rivers, and there's a story actually called there's these two fishermen and they were fishing in Wisconsin, and it had begun to rain. Well, they were in their boat and it was raining, they're fishing, and they saw a rainbow begin to form. Well, in the rainbow they saw a pair of odd colored eyes, and this was after I had actually written the book. So I was like, hey, why not? Could be one of those.
And then there was that guy that came up to us when we were in Chicago, C2,
Mm-hmm.
that was from Kentucky, and was talking about a similar thing that happened in Kentucky.
Yes. Yeah.
And that
so
like
it's kind of cool.
that like freaked both of us out.
It did. So I mean, why not? Why couldn't they be out there?
No, it's possible. A lot of strange things going on.
I was going to say, Christine, when I signed with Panda Moon, however, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, yours was the first book I read from Panda Moon. And yeah, and because I was just getting into like the YA fantasy world, and I'm not gonna lie, the twists, they got me. So I'm a fan, obviously.
I love the snarky vampire.
Stephen. And in book 2, he's really good in book 2, but in book 3, he's back to his old ways. So he's
Love
gonna be real funny. Yes.
All right. So when's the third book going to get finished?
You know what? Very soon. It's going to be very soon because even though I'm working, this is really important to get this out. I mean, people need books to read right now. They're stuck at home, and they're running out of things to do.
Yeah, which is why we're doing this and why we have our books
Yes.
on special pricing right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Books. Get books. Lots of books.
All right. Maria's new to us. Unmute your microphone and hopefully it works better now. All right. And so you were telling me you live close to Philadelphia. You're in Pennsylvania, Eastern Pennsylvania, and you're friends with Christine somehow. Somehow you discovered each other, but now you're friends. So we welcome you into our community here. We're growing this community.
Thank you.
Because we want everybody that has the creative bug and wants to write books to feel like they have a community and they have a support group, because we all go through the same things. Trying to sell our books and trying to make a living on it so we can all retire and live the life like Castle on TV, which never happens. But,
Right.
so tell us about yourself.
So I am a wife of a couple decades. My husband has a job that's considered essential, so he's been working, but his hours have been cut. I am also a mother of boy-girl twins who are 17, and they are to graduate this year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's kind of a somber time. They miss their friends and they miss the socialization of just school itself and the learning environment.
And there's no senior prom.
Being the senior prom and graduation and fall, spring sports. My son's a runner. My daughter can't work.
Yeah.
So their lives have been turned upside down. And it's pretty sad. So they have to adapt and do online schooling, and their learning is not conducive to that. So
Yeah.
it is what it is. So we're all just trying to make do. And nobody in my family likes to read.
Yeah. So what possessed you to become a writer?
I have always wanted to write ever since I was in third grade. I wrote and illustrated books. My teacher laminated them, and I really didn't do too much with writing, maybe some things here and there, not until I actually declared my major in college. Actually, I switched my major from business to communication journalism, which is essentially writing. And I loved it. So.
I started
Oh,
off
really?
in journalism and ended up in marketing and business. So, exact opposite. It's interesting.
That's funny because that's what my concentrate. I was supposed to be a marketing major, and I didn't. I thought it was too boring. All of the business classes. So I switched over to communications, and I liked that much better. I liked writing papers. Even in freshman year in your basic history class and whatever, I was like the one like, oh, this is great. I get to write a 10-page paper. Like that excited me.
I think I wrote 63 term papers when I was in college. Before even studying.
Wow.
Yeah, 63 term papers. Had to give oral presentations all the time. I was in broadcast communication too, so I had to do radio shows, interviews like that, and you know, on camera interviews and the TV part of everything. And I had to also learn how to produce all those things. So it was interesting, but I got to the point, I was doing an internship to be a reporter, and I decided that I didn't like being a reporter. So,
Oh,
and that
yeah, I
that seemed
didn't
to be
really
where
care
most
for
people
that
are.
part either.
Yeah. So, all right.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
are you going to be reading for us?
So this is my debut novel. It's called Not Again. And I actually took the pictures on the front cover. There's two of them. There's the one that's in color and then the black and white one. And I did like a book trailer and did the photo shoot for it. And my daughter's actually in that. And on the front cover, the boy in it is my son's best friend and the girl is my daughter's best friend, but they actually don't date, never did, and they're both actually quite shy. But they were both very gracious in allowing me to film them, and they were extremely cooperative, and I think they actually had some fun with it too. But you know, and it's not like I'm a professional videographer or anything like that. I just try my hand at different things. I just try not to let things stop me, which is pretty much, I guess, why I'm here.
Yeah.
And you know, thanks to Christine as well. So I do like meeting people, and I did enjoy Christine's book, and it's actually kind of funny because I've read a couple books since hers, and I'm like, keep thinking about her book, how it really held my attention. So, you know, which is funny because I'm not a big fantasy type of a reader, so that actually
Right.
speaks volumes. So, you know, I'm looking forward to reading the sequel to that. And I didn't realize it was going to keep going on. So that's exciting. So what I'm going to do is read chapter 1 from my novel. I do have a prelude, but I'm not going to read that for time's sake. And this is set in the 80s. It's a young adult Christian romance novel, and I basically have this genre bender because it's the type of genres that I like to read. And I didn't really see those genres put together, so I decided to, you know, create that blend myself. So it's a little different.
All right.
It's edgy, so it's very realistic. It's not your super clean, peachy keen type of Christian novel either. And that's because that's life, and that I like to write how it is. So take it for what it's worth, and I offer no apologies. So like I said, we're in chapter 1, and the main character's name is Christina, and she is going into her freshman year in high school, and this is over the summer. Chapter 1, Not Again. From the moment my mom awoke to retiring for bed, she smoked those dreaded cigarettes. My mom smoked for as long as I could remember. The smoking irritated me, and I told her, yet she puffed away. Nicotine-filled smoke swirled around her incessantly, like dust swirled around Pigpen, Charles Schultz's character from Peanuts. She sat at her favorite spot at the kitchen table and lit up one cigarette after another all day long, day after day, while drinking a cup of tea. As surely as she lived, my mom smoked. So much so, a ring of smoke stained the ceiling above that favorite chair of hers. Gross. The relentless smoker, for the most part, played the role of a stay-at-home mom. Friends and family called her B, short for Beatrice. I never cared for her given name. It sounded old, Beatrice, hardly music to my ears. B, her preferred nickname, sounded more modern and hipper. My mom reached vertical heights of 5 feet 9 inches, only 1 inch shy of her namesake, the author, the actress who achieved fame as the main character, Maude Finley from the 70s sitcoms All in the Family and Maude. Although I was not quite as tall as my mom, I was nonetheless satisfied with being a few inches shorter. Once upon a time, my mom was drop dead gorgeous. However, time took its toll on her appearance. Not only did she gain substantial weight through the years, but she stopped wearing makeup except for special occasions, and she predominantly wore her thick, dark brown hair in a simple braid hung to the left side. Fortunately, I inherited my mom's thick hair, although mine was a richer brunette. I chose to keep it long in its natural ringlet state, and never did I, nor would I ever copy my mom's hairstyle. Many moons ago, Miss Pennsylvania pageant promoters employed my mom to be a contestant. Her stunning face, featuring high cheekbones and big hazel eyes framed by thick dark eyelashes, just like mine, and thin yet shapely figure, stopped traffic. However, the promoters barked up the wrong tree because my mom generally shrank away from drawing attention to herself in that manner. She wasn't shy. She never regarded herself as beautiful, nor did she ever compliment me on my looks, as I resembled her. I, on the other hand, did enter a so-called beauty pageant. While it was not my cup of tea at all, I, 13 at the time, couldn't resist the pressure from dear Mrs. Martin. She did, after all, give me the gift of Mugsy. I wanted to help her. I felt like I owed her. The pageant ended up being humiliating and led to awful events in my life, but no one could have guessed that. Here is the story. The Miss Blue Lagoon contest was an annual event. I was invited to participate in it one overcast summer day while I was riding my purple 3-speed Schwinn around the neighborhood. When Mrs. Martin spotted me and waved me over, I complied. She stood there, barely reaching 5'1" in her strappy gold high heels, cut off Daisy Duke jeans, short shorts, and bleached blonde bob haircut, wearing pink lipstick and black mascara. She pleaded with me. You know, I am organizing it, the pageant that is. I could really use your help by participating, she said, distracted, pulling Elvis on his leash. It's not really my thing, I replied, barely able to get the words out because I hated to disappoint. All the while, I attempted to understand why she would walk a dog while wearing high heels. Some things will never make sense, and this was one of them. Much to my chagrin, Mrs. Martin entreated, please, Christina, we will have to cancel it this year if we don't get at least one more girl. I talked to Katie and Amy yesterday, and they said they were going to sign up. I returned, aiming to encourage her and free myself from the unwanted task. The wannabe Daisy Duke rolled her eyes. Yes, I already know about them. The fact is, there aren't as many girls in the qualified age group, ages 12 to 15. The swim club board won't extend it to 16. I already asked, and 11 is just too young. She pursed her lips as she tugged on Elvis's leash. You are my only hope, Christina. She knew how old I was because her son and I were in the same grade. But I winced as my voice trailed, only to be interrupted. Christina, you are an extremely beautiful girl. You will do fine, she stated emphatically as she bore a hole through my heart. We are having a party at my house afterward, too, she added to sweeten the pot. I have never even been to one of these, let alone in one, I replied flatly. I know nothing about it, I continued. Nothing except that a girl who 1 year ago subsequently launched her modeling career. At least that was the story my friend Katie told me, and I had absolutely no interest in modeling. Oh, it's simple. You just walk around the pool area, one girl after the other, first in a swimsuit and then in a dress. We have your rehearsal, so you'll know exactly what to do. A swimsuit? Are you crazy? I stared blankly for a bit and then uttered, I don't know, while avoiding eye contact as I steadied my bike. Eye contact was always the kiss of death in these exchanges. Please, Christina, she urged, gently raising my head with her index finger. You would be saving the pageant. I already put hours of work into it, and it is a rather grand event. Did she just bat her eyelashes at me? Okay, I blurted begrudgingly. How much begging, guilt, and pressure could one girl endure? Oh, you're a lifesaver, she said with a quick but firm hug. Thank you very much. I will never forget this. From that point on, life as I knew it completely changed.
That was
good.
fantastic. That was really good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're a good writer.
Yes.
I like that. Good storyteller. It's more
I really
important.
liked how you described yourself or the main character through the mother. That was a really nice way to get at it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
And
that's
any reference to the OG Golden Girl, B. Arthur, is
Yeah.
2 thumbs up in my book.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say Golden Girls because it didn't
Before.
happen yet.
I gotcha.
That's one of the
Yeah.
that's one of the more difficult parts about writing in first person that probably most people that read don't realize that they want to know what the characters look like, and describing yourself in a book is a challenge without doing it in an awkward way that stands out too much. And I know I've had problems with that too, but I mean, you can make references to yourself, comparing you to another person. Like I towered over somebody, which was something, you know, they were short and stocky, and I was skinny as in contrast, I was skinny as a scarecrow or something. So, you can do sort of, things like that that are kind of conversational, but it's a challenge. There's a lot of tricks to writing in first person.
I actually enjoy it. I think that for me, third person would be harder. So I just went with what I felt was more natural.
It is in some ways, because writing in third person, the challenge is getting the reader engaged in the characters and getting them to identify the characters. When you're writing in first person, the reader is already seeing things through your eyes, the narrator's eyes. So there's a lot more direct intimacy from the first word. But
Fun.
I mean, that's what I find. I've written some books in third person, and I used to write books that way. And one day I decided to write a book in first person, and man, it was a learning curve.
Well, that's funny enough. This is late night for me, so my language is all. I'm like half asleep, half awake.
I feel you on that one.
When I wrote Murder at First Pitch, the first draft in 2016 was all in first person, and it got no traction. So one day I was just like, you know what, let's flip it to third person, and I rewrote the whole thing top to bottom in third person, which Jess Reno, who was my editor, found all the places that I missed all the I's and the B's.
Yeah,
which
that's the big challenge.
that was the hard part, trying to go through, because I was doing page by page, but you find a lot of I's and me's later. So thankfully,
Right.
Pandaverse has great editors.
Yeah, Jessica's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next for you, Maria?
Well, I actually started my sequel. My book was actually supposed to extend into college years, and I realized that it was too long, and I thought I would just have it where she ends up going into her college year, into her freshman year. So it only spans high school. And then the sequel will take her into going into her freshman year in college, and that would end up being like more new adult. So I think like my readers will kind of grow with Christina. I was kind of hoping I would end up having a lot of teenagers read it, but as it turns out, that is not the case, which is okay because half the readership for young adult is actually adults. But, the fact that it's also in the 80s, it has that nostalgia to it. And you guys picked on that with, but there's a lot more into it. So that was a lot of fun. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so it was a fun time for me. And, and I thought it would be easier to do it that way instead of, we texted, because I feel like, today that's so relevant. And I just kind of thought, well, let me just make it even easier and do it in the 80s and have that type of perspective.
I write.
So I haven't finished it.
Yeah. My stories tend to be like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s too. So I think I started doing that because my kids had no point of reference to what life was like back then. I mean, one time I was telling my son a story about, I got in trouble one time because I was at the library, and I had my own apartment when I was a teenager, and I was at the library late doing some research, and when I got home, there was a note tacked up onto my door and said, call me as soon as you get home from my mom. She'd come by to see how I was doing, and I wasn't there. So of course she's thinking I'm out partying or something, and even though it was a school night. And so my son said, well, why didn't you just call her on your cell phone?
Yep.
I said, we didn't have cell phones back in the 70s. And I couldn't find a phone.
Yeah.
And actually, there was a phone outside the library, but I didn't even think about calling her because I was so used to living by myself, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's a whole different perspective, but kids today love the 80s. They, for whatever reason, they just love it. They love the music. They love the movies. So I thought that I'm going to strike while the iron is hot.
Yeah, you've got all these people on YouTube doing videos where they're listening to Led Zeppelin or bands in the 70s. It's the first time they ever heard them, and they're talking about how great their music was. And there's kind of this hunger and interest in how things were before everything got computerized and auto-tuned on the music so that everything sounds alike. So
it would be a lot different world in a quarantine back in the 80s and the 70s.
Yeah.
It would have been awful.
Awful. There's a meme going around of remember when if this happened 18 years ago, you'd have a Nokia with only 100 text messages and no internet and only 300 minutes to talk.
Oh, no.
And I was one of the millennials from before computers and after computers. So I've lived in both worlds, and I'm like, I could do it. I do have 500 books to read, so I can just read all my books. But
that's what we would have done. We would have read books and watch TV.
Yep. Well, not in Jane Austen, but
and the TV.
But watching TV would be so different than how we watch it today.
We'd have to get up
from week to week to watch something.
We'd have to get up to change the dial.
Yeah, that was back in the 60s and 70s, early 70s.
Yeah.
Well, we actually had remote controls back then, but the first remote controls you had to really press on the button to get it to click. And I'm revealing how old I am there.
Maria got us into the nostalgia. Now we're just memories. We're like, oh, remember the 80s, guys?
All right, we're gonna have to end this because, you know, I don't want to, but I'm gonna get booted off here in a few seconds. I've enjoyed this. This is a lot of fun. We'll have to get together again and do some more readings for our books, and you know, invite some other pandas around so everybody can get to know everybody else. So until next time, we'll call it an evening, and have a great night. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Everybody,
Nice to meet you, Maria.
Oh, thank you. Nice meeting you too.
welcome to the family.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.